There you go. Right, so folks are coming online. Everybody's so punctual. Hey, folks, we're going to give it a few minutes here to let people join. We've got quite a number that have registered for this Zoom webinar tonight. So I'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll kick it off.
Hi everyone, we're gonna start at 6:05. We had a lot of registrations for this event and we want to get everybody time to transition and ready, but we will start 6:05 and get the presentation and have time for Q&A.
Right. So we'll get that started. We'll have a few more people come on. We just got a few preliminaries. My name is Ben Edelstein. I'm the co-chair of Marshall ROC. We're very pleased to partner with Boulder County, the Recovery Office, and Cynthia Braddock from the County Assessor's Office to provide information for Marshall fire affected families. Marshall ROC is the long-term recovery group. We have the Recovery Center on McCaslin, and we've been very honored to host the Recovery Navigation Program, and we're really here to help in any way we can with the recovery. We are a coalition of many different organizations that work across boundaries to get as much help as possible to the affected community. And I'll turn it over to Katie Arrington for Boulder County.
Hi everybody, we're so glad you're here tonight. We had more than 300 people register, so this is clearly a topic of concern and interest to the Marshall fire community. My name is Katie Arrington. I'm the Assistant Recovery Manager for Boulder County. I will be helping facilitate the meeting by making sure Cindy gets the questions and answers that in the chat and that came in ahead of time. We have live interpretation set up for this meeting. So there will be live interpretation happening during the meeting. In order to do that, in order to access the live interpretation, you have to choose your language. There's a globe on the bottom scroll bar, and you have to choose your language on that globe scroll bar, and there should be a Spanish option and an English option. Cindy, our presenter tonight, will be talking a little bit slower than she might normally in order for the interpreters to interpret effectively. The other question, the other kind of parameters tonight about questions and answers. We got about 150 questions pre-given to us when you registered. And I've sorted through those questions, and there were about 20 unique questions in that set. So we're going to ask Cindy those questions first, and then we will start addressing questions in the chat. I mean, not in the chat, in the Q&A. So if you have a question that was not answered when we do the question and answer period or during the presentation, please put it in the Q&A section on your screen, and we'll make sure it gets answered. We will do our best to get it answered during the time we have allotted. We are going to end promptly at 7:30 because questions, I think questions could probably go on for this topic forever. So we are going to end promptly at 7:30, but the assessor's office is here and committed to helping answer further questions, and follow-up can happen with them. And Cindy's going to let you know how that happens. The last part of the question and answer kind of parameters is we are not going to be answering any questions related to specific property. So if you put a question in ahead of time with your registration form about your specific property, that's not going to be answered on this call today. You will need to follow up directly with the assessor's office. And if you ask a question specifically about your property in the question and answer section of the Zoom call, we are also not going to answer that today. Interpretation has now been started. If you look at the bottom, there's a globe, it says interpretation, and you can choose English or Spanish. And if you choose the Spanish channel, everything that Cindy is saying in English will be live interpreted in Spanish. So if Spanish is your preferred language or your primary language, please choose that. Go ahead, Cindy. And thanks everyone for being here. And thank you so much, Marshall ROC, for always co-hosting these events with us. We're really glad to have this community partnership that makes us more resilient and makes recovery stronger.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Ben. And I also add my thanks to Ben and Katie Ben for doing the technology, for Marshall ROC for hosting this. I also want to thank the community members who reached out to me, who suggested that this would be a really great thing to offer to the community. So I appreciate them reaching out, and I hope that we can answer some questions for you tonight. I'm going to speak slowly so that we can be interpreted. And what I hope to do is cover a lot of things in this presentation. Shouldn't run much more than a half hour. I'll try to keep it as brief but as informative as I can. When I'm done with the presentation, we'll go into questions, and Katie will help me with that. I also have one of my staff, Susan Powell-Shahadi, who will be responding to some things in the Q&A just to help move things forward. So we're sure to cover as many questions as we can. So I'm going to stop here talking and just start my screen share. All right, so you all know who I am. I'm Cynthia Braddock. I'm the Boulder County Assessor, and just wanted you to know that I have a staff of about 57 professionals, real stable office. We have been obviously in this business for quite a while, and are happy to work with you and help you in any way that we can. Just to start out, to remind you, and we'll remind you a couple times in the presentation, that we are going to be at the Louisville Rec Center tomorrow from 7:30 to 5. And next Thursday, June 1st, from 7:30 to 5, I will have staff there. If there's not enough staff there, I'll get more staff there. And that'll be an opportunity for you to speak in person with my staff, to file an appeal if you choose to get more questions answered. So please take advantage of that. So I'm going to step through several things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the assessment process in general, to help answer some questions about how did we arrive at these values that you saw on your notice of valuation. And then I'll step into what you can do about those values. What is your due rights? What are your due process rights? How do you appeal property values? And then yes?
It seems like screen participants are not.
Oh, they're not seeing it. Thank you. I forgot to share after all that. So here we go.
Here we go.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks everybody for letting us know.
No, thank you so much. I had to switch monitors, so I lost track of one button. So anyway, I'm going to walk through these slides. We talk about the assessment process in general, how we arrive at value, talk about appeals, how do you appeal, why do you appeal, where do you appeal, all of that, and then a little bit about the senior exemption. We did have a question about the exemptions that are available to older adults, and then we'll get into questions. So firstly, the assessor is required, we're constitutionally required to establish values for taxation. And we're required to, this is very broad, to discover, list, classify, and value properties. And all of our work is audited yearly. So there is an independent auditor that the state of Colorado hires. They audit all the assessors in the state of Colorado, and we're audited on statistical and procedural compliance. So we're very motivated to do the best job we can because there's a downside to failing an audit, and Boulder County has never failed an audit. So just really briefly, discovery is all about learning about properties. We use public records. So the assessor's office is limited to what's available publicly. We cannot enter your property without your permission. And so what we know is what's available to us if you share it with us, or if it's on a deed. So we see sales documents, we see things in the multiple listing services, we have access to building permits to see what changes are happening in properties. We watch the news for articles, for things that might be happening in communities that help us understand the properties in our county. The list component is really about the really big database that we have, and we have in the county the most comprehensive database of information about properties. It's essential to the work that we do. So everything we discover, we put in and we list in our system. We're required to classify property. So what do we mean by classify? We classify as used. So if you're using your property residentially, you live in it, it's a residential property. If it's a building that's being used for a business, it becomes a commercial or industrial property, depending on the specific commercial use. So, you know, there's all kinds of classifications: agricultural, mining, many different types of commercial and industrial. So we're required every year to look at properties and note the classification that they have, how they're being used. And then the last thing that we do, which you all are aware of, is establish values. And I'll go through what that entails. But so this is just a very high level overview that we collect. We try to collect as much data as we can through the public record, keep track of it, note how properties are used, and value them. So we do this over a statutorily defined calendar. So everything we do, the assessor does, is defined in the Constitution and the state statutes, and guidance for us is written by the Division of Property Taxation. So we have this framework that we work in. It allows us to use standard practices and treat properties in similar ways. So one of the things that we're required to do is work within a 2-year cycle. So the odd number year, which is 2023, we're all facing, is a reappraisal year. And so in the odd number year, we revalue all properties in Boulder County. We work with data that we collect that we're seeing in the rearview mirror. So the data collection that we use for arriving at property values is from July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2022. So that's the data set when we talk about the base year sales, when we talk about the sales that can be used for comparables, for reviewing your value, they come from this data collection period. So that's an important period to remember. We collect all the sales from this period and we review them. And we make sure that they're arm's length transactions between a willing buyer and a willing and knowledgeable seller, that they're on the open market, and so that we can use them as examples or to build our models with. There are 2 dates that are really important. The appraisal date, which is June 30th of the even numbered years, and you'll see that in the data collection period. So June 30th, 2022 is our appraisal date for this reappraisal. We have an assessment date, and that's January 1 of every year. So every year on January 1, we're required to look at properties and define or identify their condition and their classification. So if something changes, say a home starts to be used as a business and solely as a business, we would recognize the change in classification on the first day of the year, first day of January. Condition, we're looking at what might have changed between June 30th and the first of the year, or between, well, it'd be a year and a half as well to look at June 30th of the even numbered year to recognize condition. So that is something that will come into play when we talk about how Marshall Fire properties were valued. So below is a calendar. So it lays out the data collection period, which is from July 20th, 2020. I don't know if my mouse works, but it's down here. And it runs through June 30th, 2022. And we analyze this data. We then, on January 1, look for condition and classification. And then, this being the odd numbered year, we enter into a reappraisal. And so the reappraisal starts on May 1st when we send out notices of valuation. And the dates for that, we'll go over this again, but the dates for the appeal period run from May 1 through June 8th, end of day on June 8th. We spend the summer reviewing all the appeals that we get, and then on notice, we send out notices of determination in August. So this is the calendar we work with, and we'll refer back to this in future slides as we talk more deeply about how properties are handled. So here again is an overview. So we spend a lot of time looking at sales and confirming sales for our modeling process. We're looking at, we do a lot of data exploration. So what's going on with these sales? What's going on with the properties that didn't sell? So what sort of things are we seeing in the community that might be impacting value? What sort of things are we seeing on homes that might impact value? We identify property adjustments. And what we mean by property adjustments are things like, what's the impact of a busy road on property value? What's the impact of having an amazing view out of your house to the Front Range? What impact would being on open space have? What impact does the do a variety of characteristics that we might collect about properties? So we recognize all of these and put them in, we list these. This is part of the listing procedure. And then we go into setting new values. And this is done through mass appraisal, and we'll talk more about that. And it takes about 8 months of work for us to arrive at values. This is not a system where we plug in something and a value comes out the other side. This is a process of testing and reviewing for 8 months to arrive at the values. And then we analyze the values. So this is the reiteration. Does it look? We test it against our appraisers who know the areas. Is this making sense? And then we reiterate as needed to arrive at our values. So the top here, mass appraisal is what we are required to do. So the statutes say that we must value all the properties in Boulder County at the same time and deliver a value on May 1st. So this is different than a fee appraisal where you're talking about one property where we're delivering a value on a set date. This is looking at the entire county at the same time. And our staff, all of our appraisers are licensed appraisers, and they're held to an ethics standard, and USPAP is the ethics standard that we're held to, and this definition of mass appraisal is in our ethics standards. So basically, we're looking at a universe of properties using a standard methodology, common data, which is our sales collection data, and allowing for statistical testing. So we create statistical models. We take all the sales that we collect and we confirm and we qualify to make sure that they're arm's length sales. And these are put through our models. And what we're doing is collecting attributes, characteristics of the property, everything from location, land, building characteristics. And the model tells us what contributory value the characteristics have. So the first run through of the model is working with the sales that we collected and qualified. So it's looking at this set, and in residential, there are a lot of sales. Generally, it's around 10,000 sales that we review and put through the model. And we test these, the characteristics to see what contributes to the value of a home. So what do bedrooms contribute? What does living square footage contribute? And all these characteristics. Once we know what those characteristics contribute to value, we then take that model and apply it across all the properties in the county. So since this is mass appraisal and we only know what's part of the public record, we don't know specifically what's going on with your home unless we have been told. So mass appraisal does the best job it can with common data. And the appeal process, and we'll touch on this again, allows us to go from the mass appraisal model down to your property and hear from you what is unique about your property. So some common characteristics or considerations that we look at, I mentioned this before: location, land and building characteristics, conditions over time. For commercial properties, we look at income, cost, and market. For residential properties, we are only allowed to look at the market. And this is not, as I mentioned, it's not a simple algorithm. This isn't something, it's not AI where we plug in something and out comes an answer on the other side. This is a very step-by-step iterative process that helps us arrive at property values. So we just wanted to define this. A lot of times we hear from people, oh, it's just an algorithm, the computer did it, and it's much more than that. We have a lot of appraisal input, and we work through this over and over again for quite a few months to arrive at value. So one thing we have to do with our sales, and this is the sold population that we collect in that base year period from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2022, is time trending. And so time trending is basically an analysis of change over time on those sales. And we apply this mathematics to these sales so that they all look as if they took place on June 30th of 2022 or June 30th of whatever data collection period we're working with. And it's required by law. We get audited on our time trends. It can show us increase or decrease over time over this 24-month period that we have data for. And it's important for us to get all the sales to the end of our data collection period so that we're really looking at things in a common way. So we're looking at them as if they all sold at the same time. And that's what time trending, sort of at a high level, that's what time trending allows us to do. So for the Marshall Fire properties specifically, so on January 1, 2022, and I have another slide that will cover this as well, we went in the field and recognized that the properties that had destroyed homes were highly damaged. And so we removed half the value. So they went to 50% value, and we have a cost buildup formula that we use to arrive at that. On January 1 of 2023, properties, as far as we know, on the best information we have been remediated. So the basement's removed, the soil cleaned up and tested. And so we were faced with a reappraisal year and properties at full value. So to arrive at the values of the land for the properties that were destroyed by the fire, we used a process called the extraction method. And this is a recognized method for mass appraisal. So what we did is we took your property as it stood in 2021 before the fire, the land and the building as one, the total value. We ran that value through our model, and it told us what were all the contributory characteristics or value pieces to the value of that property. We then pulled out all of the characteristics, all of the value that was attributed to the home that you had before. And that left us with the land value. And that's what the extraction method does, is it allows us to look at, because these are very unique properties, as you all know. These are vacant land that are on at the residential rate. And the law says that we keep them at the residential rate for 3 to 5 years. So we had to have a way to look at these because they're so unique. And this method allows us to do that. So it allowed us to model the value because we're required to, in this year, we're required to model all property values and arrive at a new value. But it allowed us to look at what the land would be worth by valuing the whole thing and pulling the improvement back off. So it is not a perfect method. There are things we don't know about your properties, and that's why we have appeals. So that's how we arrived at your land value. So here, back to this slide. So in 2022, if your home was destroyed, we looked at your land on January 1 of 2022 and set the value at 50% of its 2021 value. And this was to recognize the damage that was done to the property. If you had a home that was damaged by soot, char, ash, and odor, we did a damage adjustment, based on the best information we had. And most homes, there was about 7,500 homes that received a 3 to 13% adjustment on their value to allow property owners to remediate damage that was done. So in 2023, on January 1, we recognized that from what we understood, the destroyed properties had the land remediated, so they became 100% value again, and then we had to reappraise them, and we used the extraction method. For the damaged properties, soot, char, ash, and odor, we removed the adjustment, revalued them, and they came back to they came to the 2023 value. So we know that there are properties that still have damages that are not remediated. We would love to hear from you. Based on what we know, we hope we've caught every property, but I'm sure we haven't, so please let us know about that. So we have moved all these damaged properties to 100% value, treated them like all other properties in the county, valued them the same way that others were valued, and would love to hear if that is not appropriate for your property. So this slide, now I'm moving into the appeals process. So just a couple things about appeals. Appeals will cost you absolutely no money. You can file your appeal. It's free of cost. It is something we can help you with. I have staff on the phones. I have staff in the office. We answer our emails, assessor@bouldercounty.org. We're happy to respond. We're getting a lot of people reaching out to us, so it may take us a day or so to get back, but we're doing our best to respond to people who have questions. So just to touch again on the fact that we start with mass appraisal. So we're looking at all the properties in Boulder County, and we're required to establish value by May 1st. And we use this mass process set out for us in the statutes, and apply it with the best information we have available, coming to us from the public record. So then we start on May 1, you get your notice. So this chart walks you through the appeals process and all the dates. So May 1, we sent out, and actually we sent them out on April 28th. And also I noticed in some of the questions that some of you did not receive your notice. If you did not receive your notice, please call our office, please email us. We'll be happy to get that to you immediately. We missed some address changes, and so we may not have gotten something to you. So please reach out. We want to get that to you. So on April 28th, legally May 1, we sent out notices. You have until June 8th to file your appeal. And it's end of day June 8th if you are doing it electronically, otherwise postmarked on June 8th. We spend the summer reviewing all the appeals that come in. And then on August 15th, we're required to send you a notice of determination. And that's the result of the review that we do. On the backside of that notice of determination are the instructions to take your appeal to a higher level if you still disagree with our value. And this is to the County Board of Equalization. So there's instructions. It is not my office. The County Board of Equalization is under the County Commissioners. It is a process where we show up with a report that we shared with you. You show up with a report, and there's a hearing officer. And the hearing officer makes the decision about the change in value. So they start their hearings in early September. The deadline to apply for or to file an appeal with the County Board is September 15th. Those hearings run until November 1st. And then shortly after that, the County Board sends out their notices of determination. And within 30 days of that time, when you receive that, you can apply to yet higher levels of appeal. So you can move into next year. You can file with the state, which is the Board of Assessment Appeals. Again, that's a hearing. You have hearing officers who hear and make decisions on your appeal. You can go to district court, which is you work with an attorney to go to the district court, or you can choose to go to binding arbitration. The thing to note about binding arbitration is it is actually handled by the County Board of Equalization. And when you go to binding arbitration, and the decision is rendered, your appeal rights end at that hearing. So you have lots of options. There is one more option. It's a look back. If for some reason you can't get an appeal in this year, there is always the option to, after January 1 of next year, to file for an abatement. So, and there's a lot of that on our website. You can look at abatements and to see if that's a process that would apply to you. So reasons to file an appeal. So there's a lot of reasons. The first one, I think all of you have noticed, I certainly did when I got my notice and saw it, is that this value is high and possibly you feel it's incorrect. So it would not have sold for this value on June 30th of 2022. So that's a great reason, and we hear from a lot of people for this reason. Another thing to file an appeal is that our property record is inaccurate. And for the properties that are vacant land, home was destroyed, we may not know things about your property. There may be condition issues, and that's the third reason. But maybe there's things about your land that we're not aware of that we need to know, or if you had a damaged home, we have made an assumption that you had remediation. You may not have done that, and we need to hear from that. So make sure that you've talked to us about that. Make sure if you have a home that our description of your property record with us is accurate. So it is not accurate. That's a great reason to file an appeal. Also, if we have you incorrectly classified, that doesn't happen very often, but if you were in a property that changed classification, say from a home that was used as a business and it became a home again, and we missed that, that's a reason to file an appeal for us to get the classification correct. And then I alluded to condition issues. I know there were some questions around things that still need to be done to properties before they can be built on. That's a good reason to file an appeal. That's something we don't know about, and we want to hear about it. And then the last bit is that we cannot accept an appeal on taxes. We need to hear about your concerns about value. And I'll touch on taxes further on in this presentation. Taxes are a complicated formula, and what the assessor's office does is establish value. So please appeal your value. So there's some minimum requirements. Those of you who received a postcard or your notice of valuation, all you have to do legally is sign it and get it into us on time. I would really appreciate it if you had more information, if you shared that with us. It gives us a place to start. If we don't know your concerns, we don't know where to start and what to look for. So when we get an appeal that says my value is too high and it's signed, we don't even know what we're looking for in the way of a concern. So the more information you can share with us is great. And then just note that these have to be on time. We need to have your appeal in by the end of day, June 8th, because we can't accept late appeals. So if they come in on the 9th electronically, someone emails it in on the 9th, we can't accept it. So please make sure your appeal is on time. So what can you provide during your appeal or when you file? Certainly your owner estimate of value. What do you think it's worth? Comparable sales, and I know this is complicated with the properties that were destroyed with Marshall Fire because there's not a lot of sales. So we've compiled a list of the sales. I've shared it out with some groups, but it's also on our website. If you want this list of sales, please email us or call us. We will get it to you. There's about 20 some sales that occurred during this data collection period that we're making available to you, and look at those properties and find sales that are either in your neighborhood or in a neighborhood that is similar to yours. And we know that there's not a lot, so it's going to take a little looking, but those are the sales you want to look at. If you still have a home on your property, we have a tool that will help you with that. It's on our website where you can put in your account and it pulls comparables for you. This tool works for properties with homes on it. It doesn't work for properties that don't have homes. So, but we can provide the sales list as needed. If you have a home or even your lot and you have cost to cure from contractors, what is going on with your lot, what it will cost you to get it ready, what are your estimate of remediation you still need to do in your home. We would like to hear about that. It helps us make decisions. Photos, if you have photographs about condition issues, please share those with us. You can upload them, email them to us, send them in to us in the mail. Those will help us as well. Or if you've had a fee appraisal done, particularly ones for purchase or refinance, if that was done during the data collection period, that's really valuable information for us. If it was done soon afterward, we can look at it. It has less impact, but we still want to see what your appraisal says about your property. So we have tons of tools on our website. Our website can be a little overwhelming, but we're trying to put everything out there that we can to help you. One of the tools that's been there for years is the property search tool. You can find it on the top menu of the Boulder County website. And it is a mapping tool. It allows you to look up by your address or by your account number and look at the characteristics we have for your property. So that's a very powerful tool to use. We have a new tool, the residential comparable sales lookup tool. This is the one I was alluding to that works best if you have a home on your property. It's available and will help you find comparables. We have all kinds of sales lists. The sales list for the destroyed properties, the vacant land properties, is on our website. When you go into the website, about a third of the way down, there's a reddish button that takes you to our page that has all of our information for appeals. And you want to look for the sales list. And for these sales, you need to find the vacant sales list. And there's a spreadsheet there that you can download or call us. We'll send it to you. There's all kinds of helpful forms and handouts, and there's more. So it's at boulderassessor.org. And if you get on there and you just need help navigating it, please give us a call. We're happy to do that. So how do you file an appeal? Well, the only way that you can't file an appeal with Boulder County is over the phone. And the reason we can't do it over the phone is we really need a record that you are filing an appeal so that we have your signature on something, either an electronic, an email that tells us you sent it in, or paper, or if you do it on our online appeal tool, that gives us a record, gives you a record of the appeal. So you can't appeal over the phone. We're happy to walk you through the whole process over the phone, but then we'll ask you to appeal and then using one of these other methods. So we have an e-appeal tool on the website. It's simple, it'll walk you through. You can upload and attach photographs and documents and submit that way. We, during COVID, just to make it easier and more accessible for people, we opened up email appeals, and that has been so popular that we're just going to continue doing that. Email assessor@bouldercounty.org, attach what you need to, send us a lot of text, let us know what your concerns are. Completely acceptable way to file an appeal. You can mail things into us, either the postcard if you received one, your full NOV. We have a protest form you can download and fill out and mail in. Just make sure it's postmarked by June 8th. You can drop it off at our office. We're down in downtown Boulder on the Pearl Street Mall and the county courthouse on the 2nd floor. I have my appraisers staffing the front counter. So if you come in and you want to talk to someone here in the courthouse, welcome to do that. We're open 7:30 to 5 Monday through Thursday, and welcome you. We also have a couple of drop boxes. If you're busy and you have your paperwork and you just want to drop it and go, certainly can drop it in our office. But we have a drop box right across from the Boulder Theater on 14th Street. And we have another one in Longmont at the county building on Kaufman. And we still have people who fax things to us. So we do have a fax number. So if that's a way that you want to communicate, the fax number is here. So I wanted to touch a little bit about taxes. So taxes is more complicated. So what the assessor's office does is we are statutorily required to establish value. So that's the first box in this formula. So we set a value. We then multiply it times an assessment rate. And the assessment rate is set by the Colorado legislature. It used to be something that Gallagher managed. So Gallagher, we've all heard that Gallagher was laid down in 2020. And what it took out of Gallagher was the balance between residential property and all other property. So all other property had an assessment rate of 29%. The res assessment rate would float based on this 45-55% ratio, where 55% of the burden was to be carried by commercial or all other properties, and 45% by the residential properties. Since Gallagher was laid down, the legislature is doing this now, and they have changed it every year since then, and it has gone down. And over the years, it has only gone down. So currently, for this year, the assessment rate for residential is 7.765, I believe. I always get that wrong because of the 3 decimals, but it's very low. It's less than 7% of your actual value is what your taxes are calculated from. So the next piece in this calculation is the mill levy. So we take the assessment rate times the mill levy to arrive at your taxes. The mill levy is set by the taxing jurisdictions. So by the county, by the school district, by your cities, fire districts, water districts, metro districts, library districts. They all establish mill levies. And the mill levy allows them to meet their budget. So in August of every year, my office sends out a letter to every district telling them, here's the value of the properties in your district, and they begin to build their budgets. This is an open and transparent process. They have websites you can check with every district as to what's going on and participate in their process. And the mill levy is what helps them meet their budgets. The mill levies are delivered to the county in December and approved by the county commissioners, and then taxes are calculated using those levies. So it is more than just your value. And this is another graphic I found. This is not something I created. I appreciate someone who did this. So it shows that the inverted nature of the comparison of actual value to taxes. So actual values are set by my office. The assessment rate is set by the state legislature, which establishes the assessed value, which is the 3rd section down. The mill levy is then decided by the districts, and then taxes are calculated from that. So you may have seen a large increase in value, but it's not a dollar for dollar increase in your taxes. You will see an increase in your taxes, that goes without saying, but it will not be the 35, 42% that you saw increases in your value. It's much less because of the assessment rate and the mill levies. So I just threw this map in here. This is a map that we produced, and it was put out in different press releases. It's a little bit light colored, and I apologize for that. But basically, it's the median value increases across Boulder County. So the median value for single family residences, the median value increase this year is 35%. And that is a historically high increase. We've never seen increases in value this high. But when we break it down to different portions of the county, there's different percentages. So the city of Boulder was right at 35, but Louisville was at 42%, Superior at 40%. So we saw historic increases in values in Boulder County. This is another slide that was put out in press releases. This is about the entire state. So the entire state saw increases in value. So this is not just a Boulder County concern. This breaks the state up into regions. These are assessor regions. These have no other meaning other than grouping assessors who may have like kinds of concerns and properties. We are in Region 6. We're included with the Denver metro area. And across the metro area, we saw median increases 35 to 45%. The highest increases were in the recreational corridors of our county, which are in the mountains where the ski resorts are, and on the western slope. And they saw, anywhere from 25 to 80% increases in value. So this really is beyond just Boulder County. This is something that we're dealing with across the state and dealing with really across the country. And there are a lot of reasons for that. There are a lot of reasons why our values went up. The biggest is that the time period that we must use to establish values for this year was a time when sales were really high. People were paying a lot of money for homes. There was very little inventory. There was a lot of competition for homes. And so those sales had high price points, much higher than we had seen before. And we're required to use those. Now, the market is shifting. Things are less today than they were during that data collection period, but we're not allowed to consider current data. We're only allowed to consider the data in that 24-month period that ended June 30th, 2022. So the data we're collecting now will be data we use for the 2025 reappraisal, which, if things continue the way they are, we'll see values that will stabilize or go down. I don't have a crystal ball, but just looking at what's going on right now, it won't be like this year, is my hope. So I kind of rushed through all this. My last slide is about tax relief for seniors. And there was at least one question about what can help seniors. So there were almost 200 homes that were destroyed that had senior exemptions on them. And so the three exemption programs that my office manages that seniors can take, or that they give you some tax relief, are the first three: the senior homestead exemption, the disabled veterans exemption, and the Gold Star spouse exemption. So we handle these. These all have age and occupancy limits on them. So particularly the senior exemption, you have to be 65 years of age on January 1 of the year you apply. And you have to have lived and occupied your home for 10 years prior to that January 1 date. And what that happens is that we take 50% of the first $200,000 worth of taxes, and the state pays that for you. So it's basically, a simpler way to look at it is the taxes for the first $100,000 of value in your home are paid for you by the state. Now, how much that is impacted by the assessment rate and the mill levies, but it's been anywhere between $400 and $700 over the last years. The homes that have the senior homestead exemption on them after the fire, still have the exemption on them. If it stays as your primary residence when your home is rebuilt, that exemption will apply again. This exemption applies to the home value, so it won't apply to the land value. So there's no relief on the land value. But once your home is built, if you move back in, it is your home, your primary home, the exemption will be back in place. If you chose to move away and have a different home be your primary occupant, your primary home, excuse me, that exemption would have traveled with you, and it's now on your new home. If you did that and you moved to that new home and said, this is my new home, this is my primary home, and then you decide to move back into the Louisville Superior area, that exemption will not move back with you the way things stand today. So it follows you, or it stays with your primary home, either stayed with the home in the Louisville Superior area, or you moved it to a new home. The disabled veterans exemption is for veterans that are honorably discharged with a 100% disability, service-related disability. Currently, they apply for these through Veteran Affairs. This program will actually move to the assessor's office in January of next year, but for now it's through Veteran Affairs. Again, we honor these being on homes. They'll be on homes if people move back to them, can move with the veteran if they moved elsewhere. The Gold Star spouse exemption is for the surviving spouse of a person who passed away in the line of duty. And we have very few of these in Colorado, but that exemption as well, if they were in this area, they would retain that and it would follow them as well. So the fourth one on this list is a senior tax deferral. And this is a deferral program. There's actually an article in the newspaper today, I think, or yesterday, around the deferral program. It is now managed by the state. And what it allows you to do is year over year, you can choose to have the state or apply to have the state pay your taxes for you. It does put a lien on your property. There are criteria around applying for this and who is qualified. I would refer you to the state office. Just Google on senior tax deferral. It's a very simple process to apply. And it has very low interest right now. I think it's around 4% interest for these loans. So it's another way if you're really struggling to pay your taxes this year, there is a method to get some help. The last three are programs that are handled, the property tax rent and heat credit program and the LEAP program are state programs to help folks with needs. They have income levels on them, so it's poverty level type help, so it may not apply, but good to know about them. And the last one is a program where if you're 65 years of age or older and you want to work off a portion of your taxes, you can, Boulder County participates in this program. You can sign up for the program and work off your county portion of the taxes. So it's a way that I have some folks working for me, helping me with the appeal process, sorting mail and whatnot. And they have X number of hours that they can work to pay for their taxes, their county taxes, and they earn the state minimum wage, which is a little over $13 an hour. So that took a lot less time than I thought. I apologize. I was talking faster than I thought I would. And I think at this time I'm going to stop my screen share. If I can get the screen back and let Katie start asking questions. So I'm going to have to figure out how to stop sharing my screen. So Katie, if you want to start while I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing here.
Yeah, well, I think your screen,
There we go.
there you go. I think, so we see that there are 2 hands up in the participants. We
Yeah.
cannot answer live questions. We are not actually able to do that with the current technology. So if you could ask your question in the chat, we will do our best in answering it. Okay, thank you. So I know there's a bunch of questions in the chat right now. There's some questions about specific. Go ahead, Ben.
Sorry, just the Q&A. We don't have a chat for this.
Thank you. So put your question in the Q&A. We cannot see who has their hand raised, and we do not have the ability to call on you. Additionally, there are some specific property Q&A questions in the Q&A box. We will not be answering those live. Please follow up with the assessor's office directly to answer this.
And I can, if I could interrupt, Katie, if Susan, if you could capture those, we'll do our best as well on our side to get them answered. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy, and thanks, Susan, for answering live. So we're going to ask some of the questions that we got asked before Cindy's presentation. Some of these questions have been answered already, but because we got asked them and we got asked them multiple times, I'm just going to have Cindy reiterate the answer. So, because I know sometimes it's a lot of information, it may be easier to hear the second time. And that way also for recording, if someone tunes in later, maybe they see this part and not the earlier part. So the first set of questions, and I have them organized, are all about the lots without without buildings on them right now. So the first question is, why has the assessment value on vacant lot land increased so much when vacant lots aren't really selling?
So we base our values on data we collected during that base period from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2022. So during that time frame, properties were selling for a lot. And that was the basis of the increase that you'll see that people saw on their property value. So it wasn't arbitrary. We can't consider what's going on right now. We know that values are different today, but statutorily we're required to use this data collection period to establish values. And we looked at these not as vacant lots, but as lots with a home that we then removed the home from. And so we were looking at the land value as it would have been revalued had it been residential. So that's the reason. Really, the biggest reason is that we were required to use this data collection period where sales people were paying a lot for property during that time.
So that answer is basically the answer to the next question, unless I heard you wrong. And that's why are fire impacted lots being assessed at the same calculation that non-fire impacted lots? Sounds like you just answered that question. Yes,
because we had to look at their residential. So state law says that 3 to 5 years, these lots are considered residential, which is a favorable rate, right? It's less than 7%. That's good. Vacant land is a little over 27%. So we wanted to make sure we captured them as residential land and value them as residential land. And so that's the reason. And we were looking at this data collection period with historically high property prices.
Thanks, Cindy. So how do we appeal values for unbuilt vacant land when there are not comps available because lots aren't really selling? What do we provide you?
Okay, so what my staff did is pull together all of the sales that can be used for comparables for these properties. And that spreadsheet is on our website. Happy to email it to you. If you give us a call or email us, we'll get it to you. It has, I believe it's 22 or 24 sales on it. We are aware that there are not sales in every neighborhood. So you may be in a subdivision or a neighborhood that didn't have any sales during this data collection period. What we ask you to do is look for sales that are similar. And so we don't we will adjust for things like if they have bigger lots. So if you consider how fee appraisals are done, when there are differences between properties, there's adjustments made, so positive or negative adjustments. So find things similar to your property and use those. And that's exactly what my staff will be doing. We'll be looking for similar properties to help get things as good as we can.
So then the last question that I have on the lots without houses on them is if the lot hasn't been fully remediated, there's debris still, there's retaining walls to be issued, and there's soil stabilization, can that be part of the appeals process since it's not really a ready to build lot?
Absolutely. And what we'd like to hear from you is, what are the costs here? Do you have any estimates of, is it going to be 30,000, 80,000 to build, if you have to do retaining walls, if you still are doing debris removal, what's that cost to you? What are you doing? So please share information. We absolutely want to hear from you.
General question that I saw a couple times proposed to us, and then that I've actually seen in the chat, so I'm going to ask it now. If someone has not yet received their assessment, what do they do?
Contact my office and we will get it to you. We can email it to you. We can put it in the mail. You can come by and pick it up. We had issues. A lot of the forwarding addresses didn't make it into my office, into my records, and so mail bounced. And I apologize for that. But we have it. It does exist. The other place you can get it is on our website. There is a notice evaluation lookup tool where you can put in your R number. So there's an account number associated with your property. You can put that in and download it yourself, but it might just be easier to shoot us an email at assessor@bouldercounty.org, and we will get it to you immediately.
So then this was a kind of a big all-encompassing question about smoke damage. How can smoke damaged properties that may not be on an official list somewhere get their smoke damage considered as part of the assessment reduction?
So last year we we reduced values for, I think it was 7,500 homes because from the best information we had, they were impacted by smoke. And I lived in Louisville. I live in Louisville. The homes around me had smoke damage. And so I saw a lot of insulation trucks, attics being cleaned out, a lot of cleaning going on. So there was a reduction in 2022. In 2021, we made an assumption that that properties had been remediated. That may not be correct for your property. So please appeal your property and let us know what you're still facing. We've been made aware recently of several homes where they're still not livable. And my staff don't have access into homes. So when we drive by, it looks like a home that could be lived in. So that we may be in error there. So please let us know. Please let us know any costs that you're facing, and we'll take that into consideration.
So a bunch of questions about the appeals process that I think will mostly be short answers. Okay. The first one being, can you restate the date that your staff are going to be out in the community helping, the dates, time, and location? Sure.
We'll be at the Louisville Rec Center. We'll be there tomorrow, which is May 25th, wrong month. We'll be there from 7:30 a.m. till 5 p.m. And I'll have quite a few staff there. So don't hesitate, come in, we'll work with you. We're going to be there again next Thursday, June 1st, 7:30 to 5 p.m. again, same staffing. So please, if you can make it, please come in. And staff will be able to answer questions and actually help fill out appeals, correct? Absolutely, absolutely. We can accept your appeal, we can answer your questions, we can come in with questions you want to appeal, we can handle all of that. And if lots of people come in, we'll get more staff there. This is important to us to help you out with this. What type of items can be included in the appeal? Is it just comps, or is it also the fact that I don't have fences or landscaping or any of the stuff that my neighborhood used to have? So comparables, absolutely. Photographs are great. The appraisal would be great. Any kind of cost to cure, anything you've gotten from a contractor who says this is what it's going to cost, those are great things to provide. What we found in our models, when we look at sales and over the years we analyze the sales, is that landscaping does not contribute to value. Now, it contributes to curb appeal, and people buy properties because they have beautiful landscaping. But when it comes to valuation, the grass and the trees don't contribute to the value from what we've seen in our modeling. It's something we continue to test, but to this point, the loss of your landscaping is not raising or lowering your value. It doesn't contribute.
So to ask that question, to add on to that question, what about whether we are or are not on a ditch, our property, or whether we are or not near the burning coal mines that are in the Marshall fire area? How do those impact valuation?
So we'd need to look, again, we look at the market. So we would look in that area and see if the market has shown that there's a negative impact or lower sale prices, lower the characteristics of those properties are not bringing in the value we would expect because of things in the community. Now we know the coal mines, the burning coal mines that are there, the seams are not something we've considered. It's something that we're looking at, and we'll learn more about that. Ditches can contribute to value and they can detract from value, or they can do nothing. So we need to hear from you if you feel like there's a reason the ditch on your property is impacting your value.
Great. And you've already talked about who can help me with the appeals process. So it sounds like the assessor's office can help you directly with their hours. Look at their website, also go into their drop-in hours tomorrow and next week.
Katie, could I add to that?
Yeah.
You also can work, there are people who will do appeals for you. So I don't want to miss that. There's no reason, absolutely no reason you can't appeal yourself. We will help you in every way we can get your appeal filed. But I know there are realtors who are happy to work with you, find comparables. If you have someone you feel comfortable with and you want to do that, go for it. We wouldn't, we don't have a problem with that at all. There are also people who will represent you, people who will be an agent for you. I would say look into those. Some of those avenues have a cost associated with them, so think about what you want to do. But so there are other ways to work on your appeal and then file it with us. But if you want to work with us, we're more than happy to do that and support you as you file your appeal.
And then I think you've kind of answered this, but maybe not so directly. Why couldn't there be one giant appeal process that you guys, the assessor's office, implemented for all the Marshall fire impacted homeowners to reduce the burden on the homeowners?
So the statutes doesn't allow us to do that. I cannot appeal for you. The appeal process is a property by property process under the law. So we are guided to use, or we're directed and have to use the mass appraisal process, which uses the best information we have from the public record. We don't know your property specifically. This gives you an opportunity to walk from the mass appraisal into the individual property and have us understand what's unique about your property, what we may not have captured about your property, and talk to us directly. And like I said before, I cannot appeal for you. There's no instrument under the law that allows that. So this is your due process to have us review and get you out of the mass appraisal into the individual property.
Okay, and then we have one more appeals question that I had prior to the session tonight. If I had already appealed before tonight, but now I have new information to add to my appeal, can I do that before the June deadline?
Absolutely. Please. If things come to us after the fact, you can email it into us or mail it into us. We can accept it after the June 8th deadline, but I would encourage you to do it as soon as you can. We have a lot of work to do this summer to be able to meet all of your, review all of your appeals. We want to make sure we get everything together so that when we review it, we're reviewing everything you'd like us to look at. So absolutely, you can add more.
Okay, so my last, these are a couple of miscellaneous questions we got ahead of time. Can you re-go over the information about the senior homestead tax exemption? And then also the second part of that, is that automatically included, or do we need to remind your office, or do we need to fill out an annual?
So you only have to fill it out one time. It is not annual. Once you're in our records, you're in until you sell your home or, some life-changing event. So you apply one time and you're accepted. You can always call our office and ask if you're concerned. We're happy to look at your account up and let you know. So the senior exemption is for property owners that on January 1 of the year they apply are 65 years or older and have lived and occupied their home for 10 years prior to that January 1 date. There's no income restrictions on this. So you just have to meet those 3 criteria. It stays with you as long as you're in their home. Under the current law, it is not portable. So when you move, you downsize, you move to another county, it doesn't go with you. You have to start the 10-year clock over. There's a few exceptions to that. One is destruction of property due to natural causes. So what's happened here in the Marshall fire allows property owners to say, I've decided I'm going to go live somewhere else and make that my primary home. That exemption will go with them, or it can stay with their property here. And when they move back into their home, when it's finished, the senior exemption kicks off again. We also have, sorry, Katie, if you're a surviving spouse, if say your partner is the person who had the exemption and they pass away, that exemption will stay with you. You just have to reapply. So when we find out that there's been a death of an exemption, someone who has the exemption, we try to send out a form. It's the long form that we need you to fill out. There's no penalty. It just allows us to continue the exemption on that home and for that person. So if you know that and want to contact us, we can give you that form. Otherwise, we wait to see death certificates in the sort. So it's a great program. It doesn't do enough for us, but it does something. So we'll give you some tax relief.
How is the valuation of easements on lots handled?
The only easements that I know that impact value are if you have a road easement that runs across your property. Most subdivision lots have easements on them, power lines. I know my lot has a major trunk line I've come home and found it dug up with Excel in my backyard. Those don't impact value. Now, what might impact value is you back up to power lines. Now, that's not an easement on your property, but if you have a power line behind your property and you feel it impacts you negatively, I would file an appeal and make sure we're considering that. But general easements on your lot are just part of a lot. It's part of all lots, sort of a standard, what we'd expect to find.
So the last questions before I'll start diving in some more into the chat, the Q&A questions. How do I get the specific facts about the assessment on my property? Can I get some sort of report, or is there data that your office can give me?
So there isn't an individual report. So it's mass appraisal. So what we can walk you through are the characteristics of your property, and that is available to you. It's out in the property search tool on the web, or you can call in and have one of us walk through. You can come in here and look at your property, and we can look at all the characteristics. We don't have, years ago, my predecessors provided what they called sample sales. So they would put properties from your area on your notice of valuation, and they generally were so bad, they were not very comparable, that we decided to discontinue that practice because they weren't used in the modeling at all. They weren't used to arrive at that value. The appeal process is what allows us to look at properties that are more specific to yours. So that's the comparable sales that you find or that we find that describe your property more efficiently, more effectively. So there isn't a report. If you file an appeal, you will get a notice of determination that will describe more about your property, or certainly contact us and we'll go through everything that we have. We'll explain the process. If you are interested in the data or the process, that is available. We can provide that, but that's a lot of big stuff. You have to want to have a lot of data, see our model, things like that, and that is available. We can make that, get that to you. We just need you to contact us if you're a data person and you really just want to see the whole thing.
So there's a bunch of questions in the chat about why wasn't there a more special process considered for Marshall fire survivors? What did the governor consider? What did the assessor's office advocate for? And how can I, as a homeowner and resident of the county, make changes to future processes or argue against this process?
Okay, so changes, we're held, the assessor's office is statewide, are held to the Constitution and the state statutes. We are not policymaking elected officials. We are constitutional. We have no power to change the laws. We do advocate. We have lobbyists. We have legislative committee that interacts with the legislators and talks about what we feel should be done. We are allowed to voice opinion and concern about bills that legislators put forth. Your best path forward is to work with a legislator. So there are some great folks representing us in the Louisville Superior area. We did see some bills pass that are directly for Marshall Fire properties and owners. And that is your best path forward because they can change the laws. I cannot. I'm happy to go talk with them. If you all want to talk to me about something, I can advocate. But really, I have no power over the legislative process other than that. So why these properties not considered in a special way? They are in that there is a law that talks about residential property that's been destroyed by natural causes. So it's vacant land with a residential rate on it, which allows you much lower taxes. So that is in the law. And when we considered the properties we have, as they come back to 100%, we're required to look at them like we look at all other properties. So we couldn't, there's nothing in the law that allows me to say beyond the assessment rate that we apply to the destroyed by natural cause properties. There's nothing that allows me to pull those properties out and treat them differently as they come back to 100%.
Okay. If a homeowner wanted to find the average sale price for homes in their neighborhood, what is your suggestion for them to do that?
We have all the sales that we used are out on our website in spreadsheets. If you are comfortable doing math, you can do that, or you can put in a request to my office, and we need to know the neighborhood. We need to know what you're looking for, and we can do the math for you.
Can a list of the houses sold after the fire be made available to everyone?
We can do that. Just understand that they're not valid to use with an appeal, but we certainly send us an email and request that. We can provide that list.
Okay. How is wildfire risk included in your valuation? This impacts insurability and home value of the home.
So when we establish values, we are required to use the market method, and it means we have to look at sales. So if wildfire risk is something that the sales show, then it's part of our model and it's part of our establishing values. This is new enough that it hasn't shown in our model to show that property values are reduced by this, but it's something we test for. So if over time we start seeing that houses that are open or near risky areas, high risk for wildfire, are selling for less, then we will recognize that in our property values.
Okay. The July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2022 period saw the one-off price acceleration from COVID-19 pandemic. How would you remove this extreme irregularity from your mass modeling? And then there's a couple questions about the irregularity from this time period. So
again, we use the market method, and those sales, we qualify them. We look at them closely to make sure that they're arm's length, that they're willing seller, willing buyer, knowledgeable seller and buyer on the open market, but nothing else was sold with the property. For example, the sale price did not include a car. And we use that data. And I've lost track of the question. I'm sorry, Katie. Can you repeat that for me?
Yeah, how does that account for in your
Okay.
in
So
the
we were
assessment?
right. So we're required to use those sales that were, and that's the market. So for that 2-year period, those high sales, which were qualified, are the market, and we're required to use that. We're not allowed to change those values or add any sort of a deduction or anything, because it was an unusual time when things were selling for more. People paid those prices for those homes, and we have to use them.
Looking at current data, it's clear the actual sale. Ooh, sorry, lost the. Okay, looking at current data, it's clear the actual sales price of remediated lots is significantly lower, 25% in the case of my property than the assessed value. Clearly, the models and the extraction method are inaccurate. What is being done to improve assessment models going forward?
So we're constantly looking at our models. So the model that created these values is what it is for now. We'll be looking at this data going forward. We look at the sales going forward, and we're always adjusting and reviewing and analyzing results. Part of the correcting of value is the appeal process. And so if property owners feel that this is true for them, that their actual value during this data collection period should be lower than we have it, please file an appeal and let us know that. And we'll look at the market, we'll look at the sales, and we'll adjust accordingly.
Okay. I'm trying not to duplicate questions, so apologies if I do. Our yard was fire damaged and it was not remediated before June 2022. I have pictures. Does that qualify for appeals process?
So we look at condition of properties on January 1. So if it was remediated by January 1, then your property's at full value. If it was not by January 1, then let us know, and let us know what sort of costs you're still facing to remediate it. But bear in mind that landscaping doesn't contribute a lot to the mass appraisal model. We haven't shown that landscaping has a positive or negative impact on property value.
So there's a lot of, and we had a couple questions like this ahead of time, and there's some specific questions in the Q&A about this, but townhouses and condos are in a little bit of a separate situation. They may not have owned the land, they just own the unit. How is there even a value attached to that? There's no common facilities, and what's their appeal process look like, and how might it be different?
So condominiums and townhomes have percent ownership in the general common elements, and that's what we used to establish the values in 2022. So it was based on what they own, and they do own something, but it's a general common element, and so we looked at that. When we reestablished their values in 2023, we looked at similar condominiums and what their land value was, and saw that there was a 20 to 26% increase in land. And so the value that they have, which some of them are, $6,000 to $8,000, was increased by that amount based on what other condominiums were being valued at. But so the ones that I know, a lot of them have not been rebuilt. They're valued at their percent ownership in the land. In the property. It's not really the land, it's in the condominium.
Can you explain the damage adjustment again? Was that a reduction in value based on property specific data?
Sure, and just back to the last question, if you feel your value as a condominium was not correct, please appeal. I sound like a broken record, but if you know things about your property, please let us know, and we'll work with you. And we have someone who worked on the condominiums. He will be looking at these, one of my appraisers. the damage assessment. So we worked with the best information we had, and that was people who reported damage. So through the process, there were reports made to the county of damage to homes. We went through an analysis where we, because not every home reported, matter of fact, very few did, we did sort of an extrapolation where we did a hotspot analysis that showed if this property said they had severe damage, it was reasonable to assume that the homes near them also had damage. So we did that sort of analysis, and the range of adjustment was from 3% to 13%. And those were applied to the homes. So the values were reduced in 2022. If you still have remediation you're doing, and I know that that is true for some properties, on January 1 of this year, please let us know what you're up against, and we can work with you.
Okay, we have time for maybe 3 or 4 more questions. Was the same rate of increase in value applied to both land and structures? So a lot with a standing house is escalated by the same value as a lot without a house.
So every property has different characteristics. It's rare to find homes that are exactly identical. So we look for residential property, it's the whole value. So it's the building and the land together. And that's one of the reasons we use the extraction method for the properties where the homes were destroyed, because we needed to be able to look at the whole property and then remove the home. So the percent increase depends on the characteristics of that property. And it could be anything from location to, bedroom square footage. There's a whole lot of characteristics that we look at. And so not every home will have the same percent increase. So your neighbor could have a different one than you do. And it's based on each individual property and what we know about those properties.
Okay, thank you. If we're gonna come to one of the in-person events tomorrow or next week, do we need to bring anything?
If you have information to share, say you have engineer reports or cost to cure, someone's giving you here's an estimate of what it will cost to repair something. Or if you're in a home and you have damage still, if you could bring something to share with us, that would be great. That would help. We will have appeal forms. We'll have staff who have access to the sales, and they can help you select comparables. They can guide you to the comparables. So we'll do everything we can with what we've got. But if you have anything you want to share, it's unique about your property, an appraisal, anything like that, that'd be great if you could bring it.
Is there a chance that an appeal will increase your taxes?
It is extremely rare that we increase values during an appeal. The only time I've seen values, we can, most likely it doesn't happen. I asked for my value to be increased, and that was done for me. You need to ask, basically, and once in a while we have a property owner come in and say, I want my value, and I could justify an increase in value, and I'd like you to raise my value to this. We won't raise it to I want my house to be worth $1 million, and we look at it and say, there's no way this in the market it's worth $1 million. We can't do that. But if you really want your property value increased and you could show us why, we'd be happy to do that. It is exceedingly rare for that to happen. So if you come in and file an appeal, you're not going to see a value increase.
How were their assessed value considerations for last year right after the fire, but there's not any ongoing consideration?
I'm not understanding the question.
I was trying to generalize questions, so maybe, hold on, let me just read you one exactly. So what allowed a Marshall fire discount on the last property tax payment and not this time?
So what allowed it was the law that says that a property that was destroyed by natural causes has to be valued differently. It stays on as the residential rate. We also looked at properties on January 1 of 2022, and we are provided by the state a formula that does a cost buildup that says if a property has curb and gutter, it's this percent of the value. If it has utilities, it's this percent. And so there's a cost buildup formula. when we looked at that formula, the properties as we saw them on January 1 of 2022 were only 50% there. That we couldn't build them up to 100% because of the damage. So that's where the 50% value came from. So it was done through a formula. It was applied across all the properties that had destroyed homes. We reduced them to 50% because there's no way that, you know, on the market that these would have sold for 100%. So by this year, based on what we saw, what we know, which is best information available. Again, we don't know everything. These properties were back at 100% and buildable. So if that is not true, we need to hear from you. So that's how we arrived at the 50% in 2022. So it wasn't arbitrary. We worked with a formula and we applied it across all properties.
So this is going to be our last question of the night. And then after this question, if you could just reiterate the facts about the open times that your staff is going to be in person, I think that would be useful.
Sure.
So last question, and you've answered it before, but I think it's important for residents to hear. Who has the ability to make exemptions from the law? How do I advocate? Do I need to go to the governor?
You need to work with your state legislators. They are the policy-making elected officials. The county also makes policies, so county commissioners, but they don't have a broader, they don't change statutes, they change county policy. So if you're looking for statutory change, and you know, if the laws are changed, my office will abide by the law. So work with your elected officials. So whoever they are in your area, work with them, let them know your concerns, let them know your ideas. And I know that there have been things taken this legislative session. I believe there were 4 bills passed that had positive impact for folks in the Marshall fire area. So those are the folks to work with. If you happen to know the governor, you can always talk to the governor. I don't know him personally, but your best bet is to work with the legislature to write a bill that addresses a concern for you.
So before I have you reiterate the details of the session tomorrow and next week, I just want to thank you for your time tonight in answering this question and answer and the information presented, and thank Marshall ROC for co-hosting. I also want to remind everyone that recordings of this will be put on the Boulder County Marshall Fire website as soon as possible in the next couple of days. A reminder about this presentation will go out in the Marshall Fire newsletter that goes out every Friday. If you have if you're a Marshall Fire impacted resident and you have questions related to other things Marshall Fire, my name and contact information, Katie Arrington, Assistant Recovery Manager, is on the Boulder County Marshall Fire website. If you just Google Boulder County Marshall Fire, you'll get there. My name's at the bottom of the page. Part of my job is to interact with residents directly and help them figure out what they need to know. Assessor's office is available to help through this process through the deadline for appeal. And I think that's the wrap up. So if you, Cindy, can just give us the details on the Louisville events one last time, and Ben can close us out.
Sure. So we will be at the Louisville Rec Center tomorrow, May 25th from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. We'll be fully staffed. We'll be back next Thursday on June 1st from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. We're also in the Boulder office in the courthouse second floor from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Thursday. We have staff who work on Fridays and watch for emails and phone calls. So if you miss the Monday through Thursday, we're here watching for those. And please take advantage. I have highly qualified, experienced staff who are here to help. And they are concerned, they're aware of what you've been up against. And we know that this notice was another hit, another trauma to you. And we want to make sure that we work with you and help you through this. And thank you so much, Katie and Ben. I really appreciate you making this available to people.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate your reaching out to schedule this. folks don't always get the answers they were hoping for, but it's good to get the information as it stands. I would note too that, throughout this recovery, we've had a lot of support from across the community, as well as with our government partners. Katie, certainly from Boulder County. There has been a lot of legislation, a lot of work that has been done at the local, state, and federal level to try to help as much as possible. The governor was here just, not even 2 weeks ago, signing several pieces of legislation that were pushed through the last session of the state legislature. There is an opportunity to press this. We do have, connections with state and local government. And we certainly will be happy to work with the assessor's office to raise some of those concerns where you are obligated by legislation to in statute to assess in a certain way. And if there's any suggestions and recommendations, you have to make this more fair to the community based on the feedback that we've gotten and what you understand. I think that those are things that we'd certainly like to see pushed forward through the partners that we have.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you, everybody. We do appreciate it. I appreciate all of the efforts that you're doing through to just try to get through this. So stay well, and we'll see you later. Bye.